Hey Courtney, have you heard about Greta Thunberg burning trash?
What, the environmental activist?
Yes, she absolutely destroyed Andrew Tate on Twitter in response to him harassing her about the enormous emissions from his dumb car collection.
Oh, I see what you did there. Hello, and welcome to Moms for Book Liberty.
The podcast where a couple of moms fight back against groups trying to control what our kids can read.
With each episode focusing on a specific book that has found itself on the chopping block of censorship. Who knew Greta could be so spicy?
I know, the whole small dick energy thing that she said was, I still can't imagine her saying that.
Small dick energy at getalife.com.
She got him so riled up that he ended up getting arrested.
Oh, I love it. But you know what's the best part about this is he started it. Like, he went after her for no reason. He was just like, he tagged her on Twitter. So if you guys don't know what we're talking about, go to Twitter. Just, if you want to, give yourself a laugh or turn your bad week into a good one. This exchange is just hilarious. He goes, I have 33 cars at Greta Thunberg. My Bugatti has I don't even know what this bullshit means. It's just like all of his small dick energy about his stupid car collection.
Right.
Like, why?
Nobody asked you. Like, why are you...
Like, here he is, hiding from the police? Like, hey, I think I'm gonna harass Greta Thunberg on Twitter while I'm, hiding from the police for charges of what? Sex trafficking?
Sex trafficking and rape.
Wow.
And the thing is, he thinks he's smart. But no, Greta is a lot smarter than you, my friend.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So yeah, her response was like, what did he say? Please provide your email address so I can send a complete list of my car collection and their respective enormous emissions. And she just replies, yes, please do enlighten me. Email me at smalldickenergy@getalife.com.
And that set him off. So he did a whole video response.
God.
And he's so corny. I don't know how so many guys look up at him.
So embarrassing. I know.
So awkward.
He's had to have lost all of any sort of respect that he had, that about the pizza boxes not getting recycled.
Right. That was his big dig at her.
Not big dick. No, small dick.
Small dick.
You've been over this, Jennifer.
But yeah, that, he's so dumb.
But it was the pizza boxes.
Yes.
That got him.
Yeah, because he had a warrant out for his arrest. And in the video, the pizza box is from a pizza place in Romania.
Where he was hiding out.
Where he has a home.
Oh,
so that clued them off that he was home.
He was home.
And so they swooped in and arrested him.
So thank you, Greta. I mean, I don't think you realized that you were doing this, but I mean, because of you, one less asshole is out there that we have to worry about.
Yeah, and then she had the final say because she said, that's what happens when you don't recycle your pizza boxes.
I love it. That's the best. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and the some of the other responses on Twitter are hilarious. So we got the idea for the intro to this episode from at JL Fawkes. I think I said that right, but he said, I honestly expected more from Greta. She's an influential climate activist, and here she is burning trash. So I had to kind of give credit there, because I didn't come up with that one myself. Yeah. That was hilarious.
And the thing is, why is Andrew Tate so important or dangerous?
Yeah.
He's a kickboxer, champion, world champion, former. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then he was, I think on Big Brother? Or one of those shows.
Reality Star.
Yeah, Reality Star. And then he got kicked out of there because a video surfaced of him beating a girl with a belt.
No.
Yeah, so he's just really problematic. He's just,
wow.
He's, like you said, trash.
So he's getting kicked out of places for his toxic behavior and his abusive behavior. And the only place that will have him is
TikTok. Mm-hmm. And guys started following him like crazy and taking all his misogyny and taking it to heart. And that's not the guy you want to get dating advice from.
No, that's what this book is about.
Yes.
That's why we kind of chose this real person. I wish he was a character. I wish Andrew Tate was a character in a book that was banned.
Right.
But Andrew Tate is a real guy.
Yeah. And that's who we should be banning.
Exactly.
Not the book, him.
Well, I mean, Greta kind of helped with getting him banned, so that's just awesome. Because the character in the book that we're going to get into is just like Andrew Tate. Only his name is Spencer. Actually, there's three.
There's three of them, yeah.
Spencer, Ennis is one of them, and Eric Jordan. But anyway, the book is called The Nowhere Girls by Amy Reed, and we are going to get into it. But first, we wanted to just kind of make this connection between Andrew Tate and this book and kind of remind people that, these books are worth protecting because they protect our girls and boys
Yes.
from dangers like Andrew Tate. Because the villain in this book, Spencer, he's not real, but Andrew Tate is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of Andrew Tates out there because I mean he became very popular, and you showed me an article, I think, about how there's a rise in rape culture.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I forgot about that. That's actually from Miss Magazine has this article that, relatively recent, February of this year, by Bonnie Stabile, called U.S. Rape Culture is Sidelining and Silencing Future Female Leaders. This article talks about sexual violence in schools. And did you know that it's increased by 55%?
That's wild.
Yeah, that's like a huge number. So it's a good thing that so many books featuring strong female characters fighting against rape culture are being banned in this time where, sexual violence in schools is rising.
Yeah. And we had a case here in Flagler.
Oh, yeah.
And as a matter of fact, one of the Monster Liberty ladies kept saying in there, like, oh, well, you see, like, this is why this book is bad. And I'm like, ma'am, this book is not what made that boy assault a girl in class.
Proof that they haven't read the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Because books like this actually would, and I've known some men who have read this book, and he literally told me, he was like, this book has changed a lot of my outlooks on like how I write, because he's a writer, like how I write about women, like in certain words that I use when when writing about certain people in our community. And and so anyway, it had a positive influence on this grown man. So like think about what the influence it would have on a teenage boy.
Right. Like this is something. Yeah, guys should be reading this instead of listening to dicks like Andrew Tate.
Exactly. Yeah. Because, it teaches boys about consent. And also, this is not a man-hating book.
No.
Yeah.
Because it shows bad guys, but also what a good guy looks like. And I love that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some of those good boy characters. Otis. I love that name. He's one of the good boys.
He's so sweet.
Yeah.
And then the other guy, I'm so bad with names. James?
Who was he?
Jesse.
Oh, yeah, the boyfriend. Grace's boyfriend. Yeah. So Jesse's a black football player in the book. I'm getting ahead of myself. But so yeah, like that reminds me though, because Jess, as a black football player in the book who has a gay brother, I think, the visibility is there in this book for youth. Just think of like a type of kid, and that kid has visibility in this book. Like the range of visibility of all the different kinds of kids is amazing. Like, no one has been forgotten in this book. Everyone, there's like a little piece of the pie for everyone. So. Yeah. And also the dad, Grace's dad, he was like really supportive of his mom.
Yes, he's another good example. Yeah.
So yeah, not a man-hating book.
Not a man.
Lots of positive male characters. If our boys read this book, they would be learning about consent and respect.
Right.
And if our girls read this book, they would be getting crazy ideas about having their own rights.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the issue right there. They don't like us having ideas and wanting to have autonomy over our bodies.
Exactly. Yeah, they just want us to stick with books like The Hardy Boys and Little House on the Prairie. In our society where sexual violence in schools has gone up 55%, books like this are super important.
Yeah.
So the article in Miss Magazine, it talks about the CDC's most recent report on the health and well-being of U.S. high school students. So Chief Medical Officer Dr. Deborah Oury, I think, said that America's teen girls are engulfed in a growing wave of sadness, violence, and trauma. And as a mom of two girls, and you, I'm sure, as a mom of what, three?
Three, yeah.
It's just heartbreaking to read that.
Yeah, and I can absolutely, having older girls, can see why, it's an issue. Absolutely. Because even your friends, even your friends will make posts and memes about you.
Yeah. And there's some staggering statistics that I'll be really brief on, but that the percentage of female high school students who reported experiencing sexual violence by anyone during the past year was 18%, which is nearly 4 times higher than male students and 3 percentage points higher between the years 2017 and 2021. And remind me again, Jennifer, who was president during those years?
Who was it? It's some guy being indicted now, right?
Yeah, I think he has orange skin. Yellow hair. But, and I'm not just like, this isn't just like, this is the article talking, not me, right? But I do happen to agree with it because during his presidency, he revoked guidelines that made it easier for students to report incidences of sexual assault on college campuses under the Title IX of Education Amendments Act of 1972. So like...
That's wild.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is the guy who says he likes to grab women by the pussy.
Exactly.
He doesn't care.
Yeah.
He feels that's his right.
Yeah.
As a man.
Exactly. And so, with the help of Betsy DeVos, this intentionally created confusion for survivors and administrators and allowed the sexual assailants to hide evidence against them. So like, this is more than just like, you know, his dangerous rhetoric of like being a toxic masculine figure who's like leading our country.
Right.
Like, yes, that by itself is very dangerous, but I mean, this is like real policy change that made it very hard to report sexual assault.
And it's already hard, you know, before that, we hardly ever see justice for rape victims.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
now here we are in 2017 or whenever this was, making it harder.
Yeah, that's
Like,
so annoying.
this is the future. My biggest pet peeve is when people say like, oh, you know, Trump's presidency isn't really doing anything. It's not making anything worse. But like, it totally is. It's giving like all of these Proud Boys and, you know, transphobic people and homophobic people and racist people. Like, it's giving them like this sense of security that they'll be protected by the, you know, their freedom of speech, and they can just like spread hate wherever they go.
They can do whatever they want and they'll be okay.
But freedom of speech stops when it harms others.
Right.
That's what people don't understand. Like, you can have your freedom of speech, but when it's harming others, like, that's no longer freedom of speech. There's a line
Right.
between harassment and free speech.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what they love, their free speech. They don't like us to have free speech.
Exactly. And
Like,
and books are free
books,
speech.
right?
Yeah.
They're not harassing anyone. You have to
Yes.
go out and pick it up and actually read it.
Exactly.
For it to be a problem for you. You know, they're not showing up at your front door.
Exactly.
And forcing themselves on you.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we had said about Flagler's policy, which a lot of states in Florida are copying.
Yeah.
A lot of districts in Florida are copying, which is like the, you know, parental permission. It's as easy as going into your kid's high school library and saying, I don't want my kid to read anything that has, you know, sexually explicit topics or anything about racism or anything with gender or with LGBTQ characters. And the media specialist will like write a little note and say, okay, we got it. Like,
Right.
we'll make sure that they don't rent out any of those books.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
Problem solved.
Then you also have to take away their iPhone,
Right.
and their laptop and their internet access, because they can access all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I was telling you earlier, my fourth grader on the bus, another child was showing another child anime porn.
Oh God,
So,
anime porn.
you know, so that's fourth grade.
You want your kid to come home and tell you that
Right,
happened, so that you
right.
can have a conversation, and then so that you can encourage your boy to be like, dude, that's weird.
Right.
Stop. You know, because like all it takes is one of your friends telling you that that's weird and that you should stop for you to be like, oh man, I really respect my friend here.
Right.
But anyway, we're getting you know off
A little bit off topic.
talking about like younger kids, but when this book is about older kids.
Yeah, high school.
Yeah, but the point of that is like talk to your kids, asking them if there's anime porn on the bus.
Yeah, if you don't talk to them, someone else will.
Exactly.
That's-
yeah.
Like, I don't shelter my kids that much, so
I
I'm
mean,
okay with
they
them.
ride the bus sometimes,
Right.
so
You know, we have teenagers in the house, so there's a lot of dialogue that they hear. But yeah, what they hear on it's the way it's presented sometimes. You know, like
yeah,
not in the best way.
right. But these books that we're taught, like every book that we cover, they're written by adults. These books are written by adults who most of the time have very important experience with kids, or they've done their research. Like, these books are not nefarious.
No.
Like, they're not out to send harmful messages to our kids. It's the opposite.
Right.
And so, like, whereas I would argue that YouTube is the opposite.
Yes.
Because it's got, and even social media, because it's got people like Andrew Tate who are sending these harmful messages.
Yeah.
And so in the Nowhere Girls, the guy Spencer, who's just like Andrew Tate, like, and also anyone listening to this podcast, there will be so many spoilers
Yeah.
with this book.
Have we even mentioned what book we're covering?
I did. I mentioned it earlier.
I was like,
yeah.
wait a minute.
So yeah, it's The Nowhere Girls by Amy Reed, and we're going to spoil it. This is actually going to be a 2-part episode.
And if you need a copy,
Oh yeah, we have. I can't even count how many. We're gonna put up a picture of how many we have, but basically we bought like all of the used copies that we could find, not the new copies. We just bought all used copies of The Nowhere Girls. We did this because it's banned here in Flagler.
Yep.
And possibly in other places, and we want to provide copies to anyone and everyone.
yeah, as many people as we can, you know.
So yeah, I guess we haven't really we're just like, let's just buy all the books and then figure it out afterwards. But we've got like 30 copies and even more coming. So you could DM us if you're comfortable, either on Twitter or on Instagram, or you could just kind of reach out to us and you know, tell us your situation, and we can figure out a way where, you know, it's comfortable for you that we can get you these books. So I mean, because all the copies from our 2 high school libraries have been removed. So yeah, we're gonna try and share this like far and wide on Twitter. Not just parents, but adults who have teenagers in their lives.
Yeah.
Like, as a mom, reading this was so helpful to me as I gear up to raise teenage daughters, you know, and I don't know
Yeah.
how you felt having already raised some teenagers.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely could see like my kids having some sort of similarities with some of these girls or what they've dealt with.
Right.
You know?
Visibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, this book is great for people of all ages. Like, it is a YA, like a young adult novel, which I'll be the first to say, not my favorite genre. Like,
I love YA.
You do?
I do.
I wish that I did. And it's not that I don't, it's just that, like, sometimes I can't connect with the characters in YA, but, you know, because they're like 13, 14.
Yeah, sometimes they do get a little annoying. But
Right, but not this one.
No.
Oh my God, the writer, it's amazing. Like, she made it did not read like a YA novel at all. It was so good. I recommend every parent or every, you know, adult with teenagers in their lives to read this. Boys, girls, gay, straight, trans, cis, whatever.
Everything.
Because, and even in black, white, and brown, because there's lots of, oh my God, I just can't get over how many issues this book touches on.
And how well she like weaved it all together.
Amazing.
So good.
This book
see that.
I'm sure this book has so many awards. So let's look at the awards.
Okay, so yeah, she's got quite a bit of awards. She got the Amelia Elizabeth Walden Book Award finalist 2018, the ALA Amelia Bloomer List 2018, Bank Street Books Best Books List 2018, New York Public Library Best Books for Teens 2017, Chicago Public Library Best Teen Fiction 2017, Irish Times Best Books List 2017, The Observer Best Books List 2017, the NECBA Windows and Mirrors Selection 2017, 2019 to 2020 Florida Teen Reads Selection, and 2019 Westchester Fiction Award winner. Oh, and also the 2020 Lubmi Sistak Best Book Awards nominee.
Never heard of
in
that one.
Poland.
Oh, Polish one. Okay. So yeah, recognition all over.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a surprise. I bet we're going to see this book on the 2024 top banned book lists.
Yeah.
We didn't see it on 2023.
No.
It was banned here in Flagler by our superintendent.
And actually banned, not just
Actually banned.
challenged.
Yeah, because there's a difference between challenged and banned. Initially, all the books are challenged. They get pulled off the shelves, and they then they're banned. So a lot of times they get put back on, and that they were just challenged. But then this one was just like straight up banned. But in my opinion, I could be wrong about this, but this is my opinion. I think the super did it in a last ditch effort to save her job, which didn't work.
And a lot of us do think that.
Okay.
Right? Because I can't see a good reason to ban this book.
Right, especially when, you know, there's other books that like snuck through. Like, well, I don't know, Sold isn't the same kind of book, but like she didn't ban any other. This was the first one, especially since there were two committees, because that's how it works here in Flagler, is like the book went through two committees.
Two high school committees.
Two high school and then a district committee.
Yes.
So 3 committees.
And they all voted unanimously to keep it.
And then the super's like, yeah, no, I'm good. Thanks, but no thanks.
Right. And didn't give a very good reason as to why. Like,
And that,
why, if that's why.
Yeah,
I hope that's why, because I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
I still like you because, you know, I understand
Yes.
why you did it.
right, and yeah, I can't imagine being in her shoes.
No.
But that's just like the times that we live in now. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, let's just waste a bunch of time, money, and resources on books. So here I am, a professional English teacher, taking time out of my schedule to review this book for you, and then have you just vote no on it.
Right.
Right. And again, we understand. Well, we think we understand why you voted no on it. But yeah, so Jennifer, didn't you like reach out to, because first of all, we're trying to get this book back on the shelves. Like, we're trying
Yes.
to do the appeal process because there really isn't language in the policy in terms of like what happens next.
Right.
So like as parents, we can fight to get this book back.
Right. I feel like we can, you know, they're trying to say no, the intent is not for us to challenge it. But I'm like, well, the intent is one thing and what's written is a different thing. So that's kind of where I'm pushing back.
Right.
But yeah, so where was I going with this?
Oh, I was going to ask you, you wrote her a letter. You wrote the
yes,
letter. You're
yes.
like, what the heck, man? Can you tell me why, basically? And what
Right.
did she say?
Right. She sent out a letter to the committee.
Okay.
And in it, she just explained that there were other resources available that would be a better fit for Flagler County that covered the intent of this book. And so I emailed her back like, okay, you didn't really give us any answers, though. Like, what book, you know?
Right.
And then she kind of just said, well, you know, I trust the media specialist to find it. And I'm like, well,
That's an
they found
easy
this one,
answer.
you
Yeah,
know?
They found a great one.
And right, and this one's perfect. And what book could they find that covers the intent of this book without discussing the same things that are in this book that the banners have problems with?
Exactly. And that brings me to this article written by Pierre Tristan with Flagler Live, who he reviews and reads reviews and recommends every banned book. And he did a great job with this article. And he said, there's nothing subtle about this book, but there's also nothing subtle about high school rape culture.
No, you have to discuss it. Like, we can't ignore it and just be like, oh, well, someone was raped.
Right.
And then let's talk about the other
right.
part. No, you have to, they have to see how horrible it is, understand it, feel it, and hopefully so they don't live through it.
Exactly. I mean, this just goes back to Sold, the episode we covered on, the book Sold by Patricia McCormick, and how Monster Liberty just basically wanted to pretend like human trafficking didn't exist. So it's the same thing. Like, oh, let's pretend like rape culture in high school doesn't exist. Or, the boys will be boys rhetoric isn't real or isn't dangerous. Like, and that's what, Pierre talks about in his article is he opens the article with the incidents that happened in 1993 in California. And basically, like, it was this book. So it was like a contest. So I feel like, and I didn't research this, so I don't know. But I feel like this book was based on what happened in 1993.
Lots of similarities.
Yeah.
I could see it, yeah.
Because there was like a sex for points competition. Whoever had sex with the most girls, gang rapes included, won. And it was like, oh God, the detail is just disturbing. And one of their victims was 10. 10. And it gets worse. Here's a quote from one of the parents of the boys about these girls that were abused. One of the parents says, "Nothing my boy did was anything any red-blooded American boy wouldn't do." And then his wife proceeds to call the girls trash.
Oh my God.
I know.
I would, that makes my blood boil.
Yeah, it's sickening. It's sickening. And, that's the whole boys will be boys rhetoric. And it's so dangerous.
So, right. And we're seeing a rise of that again with these alpha males.
Yeah.
And, that's their whole thing, alpha males and a guy that's good to a girl is a beta,
Oh, right.
And, they're not real men.
No. Yeah.
They'll say, they'll say homophobic slurs to them. And I'm like, but that's what women want, you dumbasses.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want your crusty, musty ass.
You know what? There's a book I was telling you about, I think, because we were talking about Boys Will Be Boys. What's it called? It's called Boys Will Be Good Humans.
Boys Will Be Boys, and then it's scratched out and subbed with human.
Boys Will Be Humans.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to buy
Justin Baldoni.
Justin Baldoni.
I screenshot it because same thing. I want to get it for my son.
Yeah, I'm getting it, and I'm going to I'll read it with him because, it's really important that we raise respectful boys.
Yeah.
So what's even more disturbing about this 1993 case of like rape culture and abuse is that the charges included 10 counts of rape by intimidation, 4 counts of unlawful sex and forcible rape. A 16-year-old was charged with lewd contact with the 10-year-old victim, which led to a 9-month juvenile detention term.
9 months.
9 months. But all other charges were dropped. And then the district attorney's office for LA County said, although there is evidence of unlawful sexual intercourse, it is the policy of this office not to file criminal charges where there is consensual sex between teenagers. I'm sorry. What part of this is consensual? And if you're 10,
right,
no way is that consensual.
Well, oh my God, that pisses me off so much because this is what I was saying earlier, that there's no justice for most rape victims.
Yeah.
Do not see justice.
So that was 1993. Fast forward
and not much has changed.
Right, and fast forward to 2017. When, Trump administration and Betsy DeVos made it even harder to seek justice for their sexual assailants. So those of you out there saying, well, that was 1993, surely it's better now.
No.
I wouldn't be so sure.
Yeah, no, nothing's changed. As a mom of girls, daughters, that is so, and boys get raped too. So, I'm not just saying that but I see my girls and I'm like, I don't know if I can trust the cops if something happens to my girls.
Right.
Will they actually do anything or will they victim shame my kid?
Exactly. And when I was reading parts of this book, like there's a, how earlier we said this isn't like a man-hating book? Well, the principal, I fucking hate her.
Fuck. Yes, I wanted to.
So there are some pretty bad female characters in this as well. Like some of the moms, but the principal especially, like she had this like the very dangerous attitude about asking for it and, I don't know.
And put a lot of the blame on the group trying to hold the boys accountable, but never held them accountable. Right. It was infuriating.
Yeah, so I guess just to give you some context, basically, the Nowhere Girls, it's called that because like they're not popular, but they're also not bottom rung, is what Reed writes in her book. They're the kind of girls no one notices, which is why they're called the Nowhere Girls. And the main character, I don't know, I guess she's the main character, Grace.
Yes.
She is a white Christian girl from Kentucky. Right?
Yeah, and she just moved to, it's Oregon, right?
Oregon, Prescott, Oregon. And we'll get into why their family went from like Baptist central Kentucky to like, to Oregon, where things were a little bit like less less Baptist,
Yes.
I guess you could say. But anyway, like she has body image issues. Like she's like the moral compass of the book.
Yeah.
And so she describes like, well, I don't know who to sit with at lunch because like I'm not popular, but I'm also not like bottom of the rung.
Right.
So she ends up finding this group, Rosina and Aaron,
Which ended up actually kind of being the bottom, right? Because like nobody sat with them.
Right. I know. I thought it when I was reading it, I was like, are you sure you're not the bottom? I'm like, who is it that you're not sitting with? Like,
But I think she ends up saying that, like,
Oh, she does.
like this
Okay.
isn't who I was planning on sitting with,
Yeah.
but like it just worked out.
So Grace finds these two misfits, if you will, at lunch, and I think if I'm remembering correctly, like God, she like interpreted it as a sign from God.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So because she's the Christian character, and so I think she was looking at like her move from Kentucky all the way across the country as like a fresh starting over point, and so she's very faith-based, and obviously she gets that from the family that she was raised in this like Baptist Southern community, where her mom wasn't a pastor because you're not allowed to be a pastor if you're a female. And I know of some churches, a lot of churches that aren't even Baptist, they're just non-denominational, where like you can't be an elder, which is like this committee where like they make decisions about like the church and stuff,
Right.
if you're a female. So to me, here we are 2023 and like that's still a thing. So that's just mind-boggling. So anyway, she falls off a horse and she like bumps her head. I think it was a horse. Yeah. Her mom fell off a horse and bumped her head and refound God to be a way more liberal guy than everyone in their church wanted him to be, is what the author states. So mom's first mistake in the church was being a woman, and her second mistake was marrying those two gay guys who own the dog salon.
Yeah, they were never gonna let that happen.
Yeah. So I think basically what happened is like, which I think is kind of interesting that like it took her falling off a horse for her to realize like that God was way more of a liberal guy.
Right.
But that's just how it happened. And so, she saw, Jesus as who I see Jesus as, this like forgiving and accepting person who just preaches love. Right. And so she got fired from her church, and for whatever reason, they decided to just move to Oregon. Oh,
Yeah.
maybe she got a job. That's
Well,
right.
they kind of like treated them like an outcast, right?
Yes.
Because I remember she was like, all her friends stopped talking to Grace,
Yeah.
and she was like,
Yeah, because her mom
ostracized.
married two gay guys that owned
Yeah.
a dog salon. Which is kind of a caricature. Like
Yes.
two gay guys owning a dog salon. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what we were talking about, was like, while we were praising this book, because it's an amazing book, there are some stereotypes that are like kind of flamboyant.
Yeah.
So like two gay guys owning a dog salon, I think, is an example of that.
Yeah.
Which, whatever, it's not bad, but it is what it is. So
Or even having, not allowing women to be a
Yeah.
pastor and stuff. It happens, of course. Like, people that,
Yeah.
churches that do that. All the churches I know, like my sister, she's married to a pastor. And I guess, she's not considered a pastor, but she
Right.
pastors. I grew up in church, but if you ask me what denomination, I'm like, I don't know, just Christian.
Oh, really?
And I'll ask my mom 100 times, like, what church is
church? You
it?
don't
And I'm
know?
sure she's told me 100 times, and I can't remember.
So I just love how Christian the author makes Grace, because it paints Christians in like such a positive light, which
Yeah.
a lot of Christians get like a bad rap these days. And I think, true Christians, like true followers of Christ, understand like the love and acceptance of all.
Right.
So she goes on to say that Jesus loved and accepted everyone without judgment. She alluded to his being a brown-skinned socialist. Grace's mom did. Which, can you imagine?
Right.
Saying, hey, Jesus was a brown-skinned socialist.
Right.
at a
He's not the
Kentucky
white guy that
Baptist
you
church.
guys have hanging on the wall.
There was even a rumor around town that someone overheard her exclaim, "Fuck Leviticus," while she was pruning roses in her yard. Now, I don't know much about the Bible, but I'm pretty sure that was where the gay quote came in.
Yeah, so Leviticus 20:13, if a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them.
Okay, so that's why she says "fuck Leviticus," and you know what? I agree with her. Fuck
Yeah.
Leviticus, because that's
And
some bullshit.
I've heard that that's just a translation, a poor translation too. But
Well, also, from what the little research that I'm doing, it's kind of like Old Testament, right? And I think I hate all these rules, but like you can still be a Christian and not follow Old Testament.
well, and they love to say, well, the Old Testament doesn't really count anymore,
Oh.
except when it's convenient. I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And like that's why I don't like all these rules. Like, can't you just like love your neighbor? And you can be a Christ follower and not know what's in the Old Testament
Right.
and not follow what's in the Old Testament. Because I think Leviticus specifically is like all about the laws and all that stuff. So.
Probably
Which
where they
should
say you
change.
can't have a divorce
Yes.
and stuff like that. But
Women can't have a credit card.
right.
Which, did you know? women could only get credit cards like by themselves in 1974. That's when that happened.
Before that, it had to be with their husband's approval, right? Or under their.
1974.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Anyway, so yeah, clearly Grace's mom, didn't fit the typical Kentucky profile of a Baptist stay-at-home mom or whatever. And so this actually, made Grace's social life hell, and she lost all of her friends. And I think, the book even says that, her friends, not even her friends, but people who didn't really know her before, would like graffiti her locker with derogatory terms like slut and whore, even though she was a virgin, and very much, conservative and proper and all that. But because her mom, believed in gay marriage, she's a whore.
And the contrast that this is the group that's supposed to be about love and caring for people,
Yeah.
And like I said, I grew up in the church, so I shouldn't say grew up. I showed up to the church pregnant and unwed, but my mom was already a part of the church.
Oh my gosh.
Like I said, my sister married the pastor.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I saw that too. They're nice to you. They want to save you. But at the same time, they tell their children, well, don't hang out with her because, she's pregnant.
Oh my gosh. So that's not the Christian way. So the last thing I'll say about Grace is that, because her mom fell off the horse and became liberal and uprooted her whole family, now she's got Grace questioning, like, her belief system. And she's starting to, like, understand that she may have been indoctrinated, which I think is such an interesting word to use.
Right.
Since, the Moms for Liberty is trying to say that, like, we're indoctrinating youth by letting them read books, right? But here Grace goes on to say, maybe she always secretly hated Christian music and the cheesy, horribly produced Christian-themed movies they always watched in Friday night youth group. Maybe she secretly hated her social life revolving around the youth group. Maybe she hated sitting at the same lunch table every day with the same bland girls she never really chose and never particularly liked, who could be both timid and insufferably hostile to anyone outside their circle, whose gossip cloaked itself in Christian righteousness.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, that's indoctrination to me.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, sending your kid to, or like forcing them to go to youth group where they show you these like Christian movies and like, tell you it's bad to masturbate and all this stuff, which like, that got really specific, but like they do, like they say like don't touch yourselves. It's like it's a sin, and like like every time you masturbate, a kitten dies.
And it's always the girls that they give this lesson to, and like their flower, and you lose petals the more you give out your flower.
Pure, that's why your wedding dress is white. Yes. But anyway. I digress.
But you know what? Speaking of that, in Texas, they're trying to pass a law where they have to have the 10 Commandments in every classroom.
That's nuts.
That's indoctrination.
That's indoctrination. Thank you. I knew I was going somewhere with that. That is crazy. I can't even believe that.
Yeah, it's...
Leave it to Texas.
And so, another Christian senator, I think, I'm not going to quote who it is or name him, was like, hey, that sounds like indoctrination.
No way.
Yeah, he called him out on it.
Good.
And was like, look... That sounds like you're excluding people. That's not very Christian of us to force people to have to see that. We have Muslim students, atheist students, Buddhist students.
Yes,
what's the message? So now we're going to move on to Rosina, which is the second central character of the story. And she is a punk rock girl. She's lesbian and from a large Mexican family. So she's not out.
Positive,
yeah, she's not out to her family. She knows that her mom and her cousins will not accept that. And she struggles a lot with like the responsibilities that are put on her. Yes.
Girl.
The oldest girl. So they expect her to watch all the cousins all the time. They expect her to work at the family business, which is a restaurant. And even then they show like the mom, she works there. She does most of the work. And Rosina's always talking about her uncle owns it. It's a family restaurant, but her uncle got it because he's the man.
And that's where like the machismo comes in. And that's where that quote, I think talks about it, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so here it says, fuck cousin Erwin and his useless boy existence. Fuck all the uncles of the world. Fuck mommy and Tia Blanca and Tia Mariela for thinking Rosina's their slave. Fuck old school tradition for agreeing with them. And yeah, we see that a lot in Spanish cultures. Again, it is a little bit of a caricature of Spanish cultures, but it's also not
wrong.
Not wrong. Right. It happens.
Right.
And what I noticed a lot too was Rosina's mom, she's very strong. She does a lot of the work. She's very strong. She stands up to Rosina a lot. They don't get along, but she's not like that with the men.
Right.
And that's something, my mom's not like that at all. She's not like Rosina's mom. My mom's very mild and timid, sweet, loving. Rosina's mom's not sweet and like nurturing in that sense.
Right.
She's more cold. And I think...
But there is character development.
Yes.
Yeah, it takes a while because I'm like, damn it, Rosina's mom. Why can't you just be a little bit more nice?
I know.
But she gets there.
And I do see a lot of that in our culture too, because I think they feel like beat down by life. And so they feel like that's their only, it's almost like a way to protect themselves.
Right. Yeah,
you know?
it's like a defense mechanism.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Rosina deals with a lot of shit at home from, her family. They put a lot of responsibility on her. Her mom tells her, you'd have nothing without your family. You wouldn't even be here. You'd be nothing. And she thinks, I'm already nothing.
Oh.
So that's kind of like she's struggling, with her
Yeah, it's a struggle,
home life.
but there is character development.
Yes.
It takes a really long time to get there, and it's like not until the last few pages. That you're like,
Yeah, it's pretty much till the end that it's like, finally you came through.
Yes, yeah, and we'll talk more about that. All right, so the final character and the triad of awesomeness here is Erin. And the author describes her as a smart and aloof student with Asperger's. So this book was like written right before they took Asperger's out of the diagnosis.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I don't know why I haven't probably because I won't get too much into it, but from what I do know is like the guy whose last name is Asperger was like a real dick.
Oh, okay.
So like and again I'm not clear on the details, but like I don't think he's well liked within the autistic community.
Okay.
And so that may have had part of it. It's just like nomenclature.
Okay.
So now it's just called autism spectrum disorder.
Okay.
The keyword there being spectrum. So like Erin is on the spectrum where she's like fully functioning and she's very smart, but she lacks social cues. Like she has to learn social cues. And she's an avid fan of Star Trek, The Next Generation, and marine biology. So she tends to hyper focus on certain things. Which
I love that about her.
I gotta say, I definitely can relate. Out of all three of these characters, I relate mostly to Erin.
There's something about Erin. I love Erin.
She's hilarious.
She's funny. She's my favorite character.
Yeah, and I think, and so I was really interested in it, and so I read up on the author's research, and Amy Reed did a really good job researching Asperger's and autism spectrum disorder, and really accurately represented the character. So here's a quote that kind of, since we're talking about the mother-daughter relationship, which is why this book is so good for mothers to read, or any sort of just parent figure who's got teenagers. This is just such a good book for you to read. So she says, Erin says, she recognizes the look on Mom's face. It's like the face dropping from before, but worse. Empathy, Erin, Mom says softly. Her eyes are wet. Erin feels something grab and twist the pain place in her chest. This means she's supposed to say she's sorry. I need some space, Erin says instead. I'll be in my room. Her mother exhausts her more than almost anyone else. It's not necessarily being around people that drains Erin's batteries. It's being around people who want her to act like someone she's not. And that's because all Erin said was Mom, you need a better hobby, because her mom is obsessed with her daughter.
Right.
Which makes sense.
Right.
I get it. But she's obsessed with changing her into someone she's not.
Yeah.
And so Erin's you need a better hobby. And so she's also really sensitive and cries at the drop of a pen.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Well, I kind of feel her though, because it's probably very stressful. She's trying to do all this research, and she starts these groups and stuff, which I'm not going to go too into. But she's always trying to find ways to help her daughter. Her daughter's I'm good, just the way I am.
And she's got her on this crazy ass diet.
Yes.
and she's already super skinny.
Right.
The character describes, or the author describes her as model, beautiful, but super skinny, and she wears all these baggy clothes and flannel shirts, and her mom's always trying to get her to dress, like her. It's almost like her mom's just trying to make her be like her.
Yeah.
So there's that mother-daughter relationship. And then she's got an emotional support dog named Spot. Who I love, which is funny because they couldn't afford a real emotional support dog, so they got half emotional support dog.
And this one, he's not spotted at all, right? He was named after a character.
Oh, he was named after someone the robot, I think.
Star Trek something, right?
Yeah. Which I know nothing about Star Trek.
Yeah.
So another quote that kind of helps you understand who Erin is as a character is, again with her mom. So she says, Erin knows what Mom's face means. It's what people call a face dropping, though it hasn't actually gone anywhere. It means very sad and disappointed. And I remember being Erin's age and being confused about things like when people say, "Oh, you're glowing," if you're happy or if someone's pregnant, and I'm no, they're not.
Right. Where's the glow?
Right. And so I feel this character Erin kind of she creates visibility for a lot of people that are described as literal.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just think it's really important to have visibility for those kinds of, because when you're a kid, that's just part of of growing up is learning colloquialisms and stuff And later on you'll see she has to deal with some pretty heavy emotions, and she doesn't, and they kind of just explode, and that's when she gets her dog and her dog sits on her and just because she doesn't know how to process them.
They overwhelm her, right? That's kind of she feels overwhelmed by her feelings.
Yes. So another thing I love about Erin is that she is super empathetic, but she just expresses it in a different way. Yeah, and one last thing that she says, and she even uses the word aspie, which again is no longer used, but it was relevant. But she thinks about how people mistakenly believe that Aspies don't have empathy. It's something people like Aaron need to be taught. But Aaron has empathy, lots of it. So much it hurts sometimes. So much that other people's pain turns her own pain and makes her completely incapable of doing anything useful for anyone. That's why it's easier to avoid it than to engage. It's easier to try to ignore it than try to comfort whoever's hurting, because usually that backfires and makes things worse. What Aaron wants to do with pain is fix it, make it go away, and sometimes that's not what other people want. And that makes absolutely no sense to Aaron at all. So that is just an amazing description for people who don't understand autism, and visibility for people who do have autism.
100% agree, because I don't know much about autism, the spectrum, and I love Erin. She's my favorite character. I think I've said that like 4 times already. But I got to know her, and I was like, okay, it makes sense. Like I said, I love her.
Yeah, she's great.
I'm gonna say it again. I love her.
Yeah, and what I'm realizing as we talk more about this is that this book is just as much about the relationships with the mothers,
yes,
as it is the daughters. And so here we are talking about whether or not Erin has empathy when it's her mom who doesn't have the empathy. Because if you think about the word empathy, it's like understanding how the other person is feeling, which the mom is not doing at all. Like, she's making her eat carrots and almond butter 3 meals a day, and it's not it's borderline child abuse. I'm like, let her, give the girl some noodles, she,
and she never asks her what do you want.
Yeah,
at least I don't remember her ever asking.
She just puts it in front of her. But again, character development does happen.
Another thing I liked about Erin, like you said, she was really funny. She has so many quotes in the book that are just hilarious, and it's just you can just read and kind of imagine her saying this. So when they first meet at the lunch table, Grace comes over and asks, "Can I sit with you?" And it's Erin and Rosina at the table. And Erin just looks at her and goes, "Why?" And I could just imagine her going
"Why?"
Yeah, why? And Rosina always reminds her, remember, you're not supposed to say the first thing that comes to mind. But I want to know why she wants to sit with us. Erin says, with no trace of cruelty, no one ever wants to sit with us. Which Rosina goes, well, that's a good point, and I love that about Rosina too. Yeah. She's just acknowledges.
Well, she's the oldest daughter.
Yeah.
So she's that's her role, whether she wants it or not, is just mothering people.
Yeah, that's so true.
You can see how she does that with Erin.
Yeah, I never made that connection.
Yeah, I just did right now.
So that they have a little back and forth there, but just the way she asks, why do you want to sit with us?
And so Rosina says, that's a good point, Erin. Why do you want to sit with us, new girl? And Grace says, I don't know, ? Because she's always speaking in question mark.
Yes.
I just met you both before, and you seemed nice, and I'm new, and I don't know anybody yet. And it's okay, Rosina says, I was just kidding. Of course you can sit with us. We're not nice, Erin says. Speak for yourself, says Rosina. I'm nice. No, you're not. I'm nice to you. I'm the only person you're nice to. Well, maybe I'm going to want to be nice to New Girl, too. So far, she's being nice to me, so I'm definitely considering it. And I love that they call her New Girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny the way that Erin welcomes Grace, because she doesn't really welcome Grace. So, Grace has a certain way of talking, and it's in question form. So,
yeah.
So she was trying to get her schedule from the front desk, which is where Erin works. And so the lady at the front desk was, she doesn't like Erin because she doesn't understand Erin. And she's quite frankly very rude to Erin, which I hope, if anyone who works in education, please do not treat other, students that are different poorly just because you don't understand them.
Right.
You should not be in education if that's what you're
100% agree.
So that's and I'm not going to say that doesn't happen in education, but that is one part of this book where I'm I would hope that if you work in a school that you're going to be a little bit less of an asshole, but I guess you just never know.
Yeah.
But anyway, the adult was oh, was Erin helping you? Because she didn't expect her to be helping her. And then Grace says, sort of, and so then Erin pipes up and she goes, the way you talk is called unspeak, the girl named Erin says. It sounds like you're asking a question, even though you're not. So she's very just
direct
with her, yeah. And this is actually even before she sits at the lunch table, but they do have this interaction, and so then she remembers her when they do.
Yeah, because that's why she decided to go sit with him, because she had met Rosina the day before. She just happened to be riding her bike down her house, by her house, and then she had that interaction with Erin. So that's why she was like, well, maybe I will. These are the only 2 people I recognize here in the lunchroom. I'll go sit with you.
Yeah. And then she was like, oh, maybe it's a sign from God. These are the 2 girls that I met yesterday, so I should sit with them. So the school receptionist gets impatient with Erin because, she didn't think she was being friendly, and Erin was like, well, I was trying to be friendly. And then the receptionist says, okay, Erin, calm down. And then Erin says, never in the history of the world has telling someone to calm down actually helped them calm down, which I say to my husband every time he says calm down.
And every woman says that, yeah, don't tell me to calm down. That's not going to work.
It doesn't actually work. But what Grace thinks, so Grace is like watching this whole interaction and she thinks, well, Erin seems stressed out, so shouldn't this adult who works in a school be trying to help her? Which I just think is great.
Yeah, because they called her out for being a jerk without really calling her out. But, to the reader, like, that's not okay.
So then the receptionist says, okay, take her to her first class. So her first class is with Mr. Baxter, the misogynistic football coach.
Yes.
Who we all know, like that's a stereotype that like that exists at every school. No offense, against football coaches, but I know, there's always exceptions to the rules. But like I can think growing up here and working and as a student of several different coaches who were, misogynistic, sexist assholes. Yeah. And it sucks, but it's just the truth. But,
that's not. There's a lot of stereotypes in the book, but I mean, there's stereotypes for a reason. There's some truth to it sometimes. It doesn't mean everyone fits that stereotype, but.
So yeah, his name is Mr. Baxter, and Erin describes him as the football coach who only assigns books by dead straight white men, which I think is just a perfect ending to describe who Erin is. So the reason that these three girls end up finding each other is because initially Rosina is riding her bike. Like she has to escape her house because of what we mentioned before. She's just trying to escape, and she describes her as like the chubby white girl.
Yeah,
and she's like, oh, what is that chubby white girl doing in Lucy's house? Yes. And now we're like, who's Lucy? And so she's intrigued. So she rides her bike up and she like yells, hey, do you know whose house you live in or something, right? Doesn't she do that?
Yeah, she pulls up and is like, what are you doing here? Yeah. Or something, she starts a conversation with Grace.
And Grace is like, well, tell me, like, whose house? And then she and then Rosina kind of regrets it and doesn't really want to talk about it anymore. But like, it already got, it got Grace intrigued.
Yes.
Like, Grace is like, well, now I want to know, like, who is this person?
Yeah.
And then Grace goes back up to her room, and then what does she find?
She's in her room, and she sees, she notices some writing near the bottom of the wall. And she rolls off the bed and kneels in the corner for a closer look. Hear me, the scribbles say. Help me. She stays on her knees in a position of prayer, reading the words over and over. Later on, she describes it again as, help me, the scratches say. They are the texture of screaming. So rough, they must have been carved by fingernails.
Ugh.
Carved by fingernails.
Yikes. That's when I read that, I was like, what the heck? What do you need help? Like, what is it?
Right. And me, because I'm into horror films, I'm like, it's a ghost.
This is not a supernatural book. Sorry for those of you that are into that. That would be cool though.
Right.
That's not where my mind went. My mind went to child abuse or something. I was like,
oh my God,
her parents abusing her. That's what I thought. Did they lock her in her room?
Yeah.
But no, that's not what happened.
No.
So we get to school, and that's where Grace meets them at the lunch table, and so she kind of forces Rosina to tell her.
And I like that about her too, that she's very. She's the girl that asks a lot of questions, but she becomes very assertive.
Yeah, she went from meek and quiet to conscientious, curious, and like strong, and brave is the word I was looking for. Brave. So anyway, so they're all just sort of becoming friends and noticing each other's lunches. And Grace notices Erin's lunch in a small tin container with 3 compartments. And then Erin says, this is my bento box. It's from Japan. My mom got it for me because I don't like my food to touch. And Grace looks at it and she goes, are you on a diet? She goes, not on purpose. And then Rosina pipes up and says, Erin's mom feeds her leaves and sticks so she won't hit herself anymore. Which is just such a funny characterization of autism parents who think, and maybe for good reason, that diet impacts their behavior.
Right.
And sugar probably does have a little bit of an impact on behavior, but Erin's mom takes it to the extreme.
Yes.
And so that's interesting.
But I also like the way Rosina's so you don't hate yourself, she just jokes about how she reacts to certain situations.
Exactly.
So even though Rosina had just met her, she didn't recognize that she'd seen her the other day, and she goes, oh shit, you live in, that's wrong. You live in Lucy Monahan's old house. Shit. Rosina fake slapped herself. I promise I wouldn't utter her name again. Why not? Grace asks. I do not want to contribute to this town's unhealthy obsession with that girl. It's been a whole summer and people are still talking about her. Get a life, Prescott. Was she your friend? You're looking at my friend, Rosina says. This bald girl eating rabbit food.
I love it.
Erin looks up from her lunch of shredded vegetables. People aren't going to stop talking about her until they stop feeling guilty, Erin says. They can't let it go because it's still weighing on their consciences. Conscience. What's the plural of conscience? I should know this.
I don't know that, Erin. Consciences? Probably.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't say it.
Yeah.
That's where they kind of get into who's Lucy, and that's where Grace is now she's curious. What happened to
Yeah, and
what
that's
happened to her?
She ends up asking, like, okay, now you guys have to tell me. And they're like, we don't want to talk about it. So Grace says, what exactly happened to Lucy? Did she say someone raped her? Or who'd she say did it? Neither Rosina nor Aaron says anything. They take a bite of their lunches in tandem. Did you believe her, Grace says? Rosina says, of course we believed her. Most everybody did, but they'll never admit it. Probably half the girls in the school have had some kind of run-in with one of those assholes. Rosina looks up from her barely eaten sandwich, but it doesn't fucking matter. And then at this point, Erin just has had enough, and she just starts talking about something called nudie branches, which are nudie branches are sea slugs, which is a misleading name because they're the most beautiful and graceful creatures of the sea. So she's using her knowledge of marine biology as like a defense mechanism because it makes her uncomfortable, and there's a reason for that, which we find out later. Why Erin is so uncomfortable talking about this. But yeah, you're right. They don't tell her exactly what happened. Grace really wants to know what the heck is going on, right? So she keeps pushing Rosina. And Rosina said, well, have you ever read that book, The Scarlet Letter? Lucy was kind of like that, except not. And then Grace goes, I never read it. It was banned from my school's library. And I'm like, of course it was, because you live in Kentucky, but really it's everywhere, right?
Yes.
And then Rosina says, wow, we're not even that backward here.
Yes, I remember reading that.
So I just like that. So Rosina goes on to talk about Lucy. She didn't do anything, but it doesn't really matter what actually happened. It just matters that she talked about it.
Yeah. They didn't want to, they didn't want to get rid of their football team. Mm-hmm. And so they protected the boys and turned their back on her.
Yeah. And then Rosina goes on to say, the thing is, people don't want to hear something that'll make their lives more difficult, even if it's the truth. People hate having to change the way they see things. So instead of admitting the world is ugly, they shit on the messenger for telling them about it, which is
spot on.
The perfect description of Moms for Liberty.
Yes.
We're like so sold, and All Boys Aren't Blue, and now this book are the messenger, and Moms for Liberty are shitting on these messages because they think the world is ugly and they don't want to hear about it.
Right.
Well, just because you don't want to hear about it and it makes you uncomfortable doesn't mean that we can't talk about it.
Right. We can't just ignore it.
Yeah. And our kids need to know about it. And again, when we say kids, we mean high school.
and you know what? Not just high school, though, to be honest. Like, younger kids deal with this stuff, too.
True. This is, we're
starting to see this in middle school, elementary school.
Yeah. I mean, if you think that your kid is in 8th grade and doesn't know what rape is, then I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
Unless they go to, unless they're homeschooled. They go to, a really small Christian school or something. And
let me tell you, Christian schools are,
worse.
Yes. I used to joke that in my high school, we were all the poor kids. We were the ones that sold drugs to the rich Christian kids. Yes. So we had all the pot smokers in our school.
Oh my gosh.
And the Christian school had all the cokeheads.
Oh no.
Because they could afford it.
That's hilarious.
That's where the Nowhere Girl starts, right? Because Lucy wants to nail these fuckers for what they did. Because she feels that...
No, Grace.
Grace, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Grace wants to get justice for Lucy. Lucy's not there. So they come up with this plan to get a group of girls together. And they use Erin, her access to the school
right,
emails and stuff.
In the receptionist's office on the computer.
And the receptionist thinks that she's just dumb.
Yeah,
they don't realize how smart she is.
Yeah.
So, they don't pay attention to what she's doing. Mm-hmm. So she emails, she gets the email list from there, and they create a fake email account, and they email them all to meet up in one spot and get together. And at first, not many girls showed up, but just enough to start the little revolution.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, it was just a small handful, but it did get started. It did get them started.
Yeah. And it didn't go well the first round, because everybody was like, what are we doing here? There, nobody was acknowledging who started the group. Nobody knows that it's Rosina, Erin, and Grace. And so eventually I think the school, Melissa, right? No, Margot.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so she's the student body president of Prescott High School. And so she takes control of the meetings when they all show up.
Right.
And kind of, starts putting action to the group.
And she brings up the Scarlet Letter thing where it's kind of like the Scarlet Letter, but not. And this is where we learn about the anonymous blog, right? Which we find out later. And I think, our listeners and anyone who reads the book can guess who it is, but we'll leave that up to you. But what's the name of the blog?
So it's The Real Men of Prescott.
Okay. And there's so many entries. And before Jennifer reads this, I do want to say that this blog was based off of a real thing. Did you know that?
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, so if you go to the back of the book, it tells you like if you read like the author's notes on it, she took this from a real life like scenario that happened in Asheville, North Carolina. It was these business owners, I think they owned a coffee shop or something like that, and like he had this anonymous blog, and it was like, what are those called? They're called incels. Like,
oh yes, incels, yes.
So involuntary celibate, basically because like I don't know, for whatever reason women don't like them. Maybe it's because you're an asshole, I don't know. And so he's an incel, and he writes this like terrible blog with all these terrible things about women and how men can dominate them and stuff.
He's probably also a self-proclaimed nice guy.
Oh yeah,
because they love to say, "Oh, I'm nice to these girls," and look at they won't fuck me.
Although in this book, the character is not a nice guy.
They're not nice.
So go ahead and read that first.
So this entry says, all women are insecure and longing for male validation. The fact that they hate themselves is our most powerful weapon, and one of the most important tools of the game is to learn how to use that self-hate to our advantage. This works especially well for super hot girls, whose whole sense of worth comes from their ability to control men with their looks. Show them that you aren't being controlled by knocking them down a notch. Ignore them, tease them, point out their little flaws. Use their insecurities against them, and they'll do anything and everything to get your approval. You will be the one they want because they'll be so afraid you don't want them. Alpha Guy 541.
Okay, so when I read that, I was like, at first I was like, okay, I don't like this book anymore. Because like, not just because of that, but because I was like, this isn't real.
Oh,
That's
no.
just me being naive.
When I read that, I was like, yep, I see guys like that all the time.
See, I'm just being naive, yeah.
Because I spend too much time on TikTok, so I see this crap all the time.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, this is Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
To me, it screamed Andrew Tate, and like guys like him.
If you want to ban this book, you do not want to stand up for women. You do not want to stand up against sexism or misogyny. You are just as bad as Andrew Tate and the author of these misogyny
and all these other incels.
Yeah, I just don't get it.
Right, because this whole book is about not accepting this behavior and saying like, this is not okay. Mm-hmm. That's not how we treat women. Mm-hmm. You know.
And you know what I think? Part of the reason why people may have banned this book is because it talks about female pleasure. Like, yes. And we'll get into that later, but like there are some scenes in the book where like, you know, they're like, well, you know, it sort of contrasts between like the rape, the non-consensual rape and the sexual violence, and then it flips to a scene of like consensual, pleasurable sexual experience. And it's like, oh, sorry, do we not want our young women to know that sex can be a pleasurable thing?
And they seem to have more issue with those scenes than they do with the rape.
Yes.
Which is like very telling.
And so that's like, that's just so confusing to me because like one side of me it's like, okay, it's a public school library and they want to keep it out for that reason. But it sort of just outweighs, you know, the empowerment of women and the no means no and the sexual consent and also the fact it really puts virgins on a pedestal too. It's like it's okay if you want to wait, like because there's girls in this book that want to wait until marriage, right? And so I mean, doesn't that outweigh the others?
When I was reading that part where the girls are talking about their virginity and you know other girls are not virgins, I liked it because it wasn't saying one was better than the other. Right. It wasn't accusing anybody of being a slut because you've slept with someone. It was just saying like whatever choice is good for you.
Yeah. The book isn't like sending a message like go out and fuck your boyfriend or anything like that. Like,
look, I'm gonna put it to you from like my perspective as a mom of teenage girls, right? Yeah. I'm not dumb. I know that they know about sex. I know just preaching abstinence is not going to be the ticket. You know, it didn't work for my mom with me. So I want them just to have knowledge, like know the facts. And then the most important thing for me is when you're ready to take that step, it's because you want to take that step, not because you're being pressured by your boyfriend or by a guy or because all the other kids are doing it. It's because you're ready and you want to do it. And so that's how I approach it. Now, if you don't want to approach it that way, obviously we all parent differently, whatever.
Which is why you can say, I don't want my kid reading this book. Right. Right. I don't understand. I thought that was the solution. Like there are clearly more parents and guardians that want their kids to access to all books than not. Yes. Which is why this policy, specifically here in Flagler, is beautiful because it can prevent little Julianne from reading the Nowhere Girls because their mom thinks that it's gonna, you know, turn her into a slut or something. Right. But it's not.
No, because even they highlight the virgins in the story as, you know, like Grace is a virgin in the story, and there's more.
She's the strongest character. Yes. One of the strongest characters in the book. So because Erin has access to all of those email addresses, they send out an email, and let's read the email.
The email says, "Dear friends and classmates, are you tired? Are you scared? Are you tired of being scared? Are you angry? We know what they did. Spencer Klimt, Eric Jordan, and Ennis Calhoun? We know they raped Lucy. We know they have hurt others, probably many of us. We know they will hurt more. But it is not just them, not just those three. It is everyone. It is the whole school, the students and administration, the whole community of Prescott who let them get away with it. It is their friends and families and teammates who looked the other way. It is everyone who made excuses, everyone who thought boys will be boys, everyone who thought it'd be easier to ignore Lucy than to give her justice. When they raped Lucy, they raped all of us. Because it could have been us. It could have been any of us. Who will be next? The rape continues as long as they remain unpunished for what they did. Are you tired of enduring? Are you tired of letting things go? Are you tired of being silent? We failed Lucy. We will not continue to fail ourselves. We will not continue to fail one another. We will meet Thursday after school in the basement conference room of the Prescott Public Library. Enter through the emergency exit door in the alley off State Street. It will be propped open. This meeting is intended to be a safe, anonymous, and confidential space. What is shared and the names of who's present will not leave the room. Are you ready to do something? Are you ready to take matters into your own hands? Join us. Together we are stronger than they are. We will not be silent any longer. Love, the Nowhere Girls.
I love that. And did you know that they're actually, like, because of this book, real life, like, Nowhere Girls started happening at, like, other high schools?
Oh, I didn't know that.
I don't think it was the same, situation, but it was, like, feminist groups. That were
okay.
Like, oh, our school has, toxic rape culture, too, so we're gonna, speak out against it.
Nice.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, like, that's just one of, like, thousands of reasons to have books like this, to empower our young women and to help them understand. It is a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
Lucy was at a party and she was drinking, but she was a virgin.
Right.
And she didn't want to have sex.
No. She liked the attention that the guy was giving her.
Right. And what teenage
but that doesn't
girl
mean
doesn't?
Right.
Yeah.
That didn't mean she wanted to get gang raped.
Exactly. And that just goes back to, the ugly in the world, and if it makes you uncomfortable, you just want to pretend like it doesn't happen, and you want everyone else around you to pretend like it doesn't happen, and that's not freedom. That's not liberty, right? You can't decide what other parents want to help their children understand. Boys will be boys. That's not something I want my boy to grow up believing.
Not at all.
That does not apply to you, sir.
And unfortunately, some of them want to raise their kids like this.
That's true, and that's their freedom to do so.
But I'm going to teach my daughter to kick your son in the nuts.
That's a really good point, Jennifer. Let's talk about that. Like, are we fighting to have Moms for Liberty's kids read these books?
No.
We're just fighting for our kids to read these books.
Exactly.
And by our kids, I mean, like, because I know I could go buy this and give it to my kid and have them read it, but like, we are the voices of all the other parents out and guardians out there that can't, make a podcast or can't go to the school board meetings and can't complain or maybe just don't have the emotional capacity or the time because they're working 60 hours a week or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, there are adults out there that share our belief, which is that books should be available to all students, and we do agree, like, as a parent, if you want to censor some of the books, then that's your right to do so.
Right.
I don't agree with it, but we're not forcing this book down your kids' throats.
Right. We're not making it part of the curriculum.
Exactly.
We're not saying every child has to read it. We think they should, but you're the parent.
Right. And so let me just give you a scenario, like, of, let's just say there's a 15-year-old who's got a single mom. She doesn't have a dad or whatever. She's living the single parent life, right? And there's not a lot of guidance at home. Her mom works a lot. So she goes to the library after school and this book is there and she can read it. And it just so happens that, her boyfriend's pressuring her to have sex.
Right.
And she doesn't really want to. But this book empowers her not to do that. And her mother couldn't do that because she's out working, to put food on the table and put a roof over her head. That's who we're fighting for.
Exactly. So. But no, that's exactly it. There's girls who might not realize that they can say no or can decide, I am ready. And like I said, I get it. If you're pushing abstinence, this might not be a book you want your child to read, right? Because it might give her ideas that it's okay.
Yeah.
Not that it's okay. I never tell my kids it's okay. Like, I don't want to also like be like, yeah, go have sex. It's great.
Right.
I'm not telling my kid that. I'm just telling her when you're ready.
Right.
And you want to, not because you're being pressured or being forced to or anything like that. And then talk to me about it.
Yeah.
And we do have these open conversations, and they do come to me when they have, not always right away sometimes, but they do.
Right.
But again, that's how I want to do it with my kids. Not everybody wants to do it that way. Teaching that only abstinence is not, has not worked in the past.
So yeah, speaking of abstinence, I just happen to have a National Library of Medicine, actually it's the National Institute of Health journal, and there's an article about abstinence-only education, and it says, I'll just kind of skip to the end here, these data show clearly that abstinence-only education as a state policy is ineffective in preventing teenage pregnancy and may actually be contributing to the high teenage pregnancy rates in the United States. So
there you have it.
I mean, facts, people.
Yeah.
Like, abstinence-only education is what Flagler practices, and let's just say we had a daycare at our high school for the students, and as a teacher I was able to send my kid there, and so I was like teaching my students, and we had babies at the same age, and they were friends. I can picture their Halloween costume.
You're having mom talks with your mom chats.
Yeah, and I was a biology teacher, so like when we got to like the unit on reproduction, I was like, in my head I was like, well, it's too late to have that conversation.
Right. Well, and my girls tell me all the time, like, oh my God, Mom, there's like 5 girls pregnant, It's like going around again, you know? And I'm like,
it's contagious.
It's contagious, yeah.
I mean, misinformation is, contagious.
Yeah.
And that leads to unwanted pregnancies. And, I'll throw on top of that you can't get an abortion in Florida anymore.
Well, yes, this is something I tell my kids all the time. I'm like, hey, 6 weeks now, like.
You don't even know you're pregnant.
No.
You find, when you decide to have a baby, you don't have your first doctor's appointment until 9 weeks. And I mean that's a whole nother podcast. So we
right.
Get into that. But, so I think we mentioned before that this is going to be 2 episodes. So this is part 1 because this book just has so much goodness in it that we wanted to separate it into 2 episodes. So we're nearing the end of the first part. We're at chapter 16. There's like 50 chapters in this book. So we're making our way through the book here. It's a good spot for us, I think, to end this episode before it gets freakishly long.
Yes. Thanks for listening to this episode. Stay tuned for part 2, where we read the controversial scenes that got this book banned.
And remember, they can't take books away from you
if you've already read them.